It being 10 o'clock-ish as usual, I now call to order this public hearing of the Public Works and Highways for Tuesday, 3/24/26. First bill we would like to hear is Senate Bill 497. And I understand to introduce this is Senator Claire McLeod. Claire Roulard. I don't know where I got McLeod out of.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm used to my name being many, many things. I answer to anything. I am here on behalf of the Senate to introduce Senate Bill 497. I will not be offering any testimony. I'm merely here to introduce the bill. I'm assuming that there are others in back of me that will be speaking in favor or against the bill, but I am here merely to introduce it. When I was looking at this last night, I thought, my gosh, I think that's the longest title in a bill that I've seen in a long time. But I'm also told that in introducing the bill, I should give the bill number and say the title of the bill. So here goes. It's Senate Bill 497, and it is entitled Removing a Reference to Procurement through the Department of Administrative Services for Certain Capital Appropriations to the Community College System of New Hampshire, and changing a reference regarding spaces assigned for use for members of the legislature. And I hope I didn't miss a word.
I don't think you missed a thing. And she's not going to take any questions. So thank you very much for the introduction.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Shannon Reed, Community Colleges.
Good morning, everybody. For the record, my name is Shannon Reed. I'm Director of Government Affairs for the Community College System of New Hampshire. It's very good to see you all. Senate Bill, first of all, I did hand out testimony, so you should have that in front of you. It's a page of testimony, then behind it is the capital budget with the changed areas highlighted, which I can walk you through if you'd like. Senate Bill 497 corrects a technical oversight in House Bill 25 of 2025, the state capital budget. I'll also discuss an amendment that we requested that has been drafted by Chairman Mills that relates to a prior different capital appropriation. So there's really two pieces that I'm here to speak to. The bill that you see before you, the beginning of it addresses one of the community college system projects in House Bill 25 of 2025. I think lines 14 on is the non-germane amendment that someone else will be here to speak to. Senate Bill 497 amends last year's capital budget. In that bill, a Community College System of New Hampshire IT infrastructure project was funded in two ways and in two places in House Bill 25. New funds were appropriated in the front part of House Bill 25, and then repurposed lapsed funds from other state projects were directed to CCS&H in the back part of House Bill 25 to comprise the full amount. This is a practice you'll be familiar with that the committee has used to repurpose lapsed funds. There is boilerplate language in every capital budget that governs appropriations to the community college system, directing that the sums appropriated shall be expended by the Board of Trustees pursuant to policies that they have adopted. This language was, as expected, attached to the funding made through new capital appropriations, those in the front part of House Bill 25. However, the section of the bill that repurposes prior capital appropriations inadvertently kept language that pertains to state agency projects, which are managed by the Department of Administrative Services, Bureau of Public Works, through requirements that are spelled out in RSA 21I. The Bureau of Public Works does not work with the community college system on our capital projects, so Senate Bill 497 is a technical correction to remove the state agency boilerplate language and incorporate by reference the community college system language for that project. I can assure the committee that we have sound policies in place which have served us for many years that govern how we expend the funds and also build in accountability through regular reporting to the state. I can walk you through the sections of House Bill 25 if you would like to go one by one through the sections that are affected by Senate Bill 497. You have those pages in testimony that's highlighted with some annotations. So if you would prefer that I not walk through them in my testimony, that's fine. And so that explains the core of the bill. I can stop there and take questions, or I can also talk about the proposed amendment.
Let's stop there. Do we have any questions so far on this? This is a rather simple thing. We do this quite frequently. Just changes to boilerplate language in House Bill 25. No questions? Certainly. Then go ahead and proceed.
Thank
to
you.
the proposed amendment.
So recently we approached Chairman Mills and Mr. Shea, who staffs the committee, seeking help with a prior capital project. Briefly, we seek to expand the use of funds previously appropriated for respiratory therapy renovations and equipment at Nashua Community College to achieve a more flexible, multi-use allied health space. This does not change the funding amount at all, but it does enable us to meet a range of needs in the healthcare workforce. It's also congruent with the goals of the Rural Health Transformation Grant, the Go North initiative that the state's recently embarked upon, and it's more responsive to student and employer demand. It will still help us support respiratory therapy, but also fields like phlebotomy, radiologic technology, LNA, and others by making adjustments mostly to the equipment that we purchase as part of this project. But we didn't feel we could do that without coming back to the committee and the legislature to change the title of that appropriation. So there's an amendment drafted to simply change the title from Respiratory Therapy Program Teaching Space and Renovations to Allied Health Instructional Center for Teaching Equipment and Renovations. Again, I can go into more detail on that if you would like, but cognizant of your time, I can also stop there.
Any questions at all for Ms. Reed? Yeah, go ahead, Representative Brown.
I was just looking at the highlighted section. I hadn't changed. I'm just wondering where it says second line.
Representative Brown, your mic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the second to last page, it refers to section 159.13, lapse of prior capital balance. And then it talks about the 649,513 that lists the stuff. How does this differ from what we previously passed, or does it differ? I'm trying to figure out why we're highlighting this particular section, and the same thing on the last page, page 8.
So if you're talking about page 8 of House Bill 25.
Actually, page 7 and then page 8.
Okay.
We have the,
I just wanted to show you by highlighting these
Okay.
what's affected by Senate Bill 497. Nothing on page 7 is changing. That's the appropriation I'm talking about, though.
Okay.
And then on page 8, what I've highlighted in blue is the problematic language for us that would bind us to the processes that are used by the State Bureau of Public Works, and we don't have access to their work.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Follow up.
So just quickly, really the dollar amounts don't change. You're just reallocating and clarifying the language as you indicated about the prior program.
That's exactly right. The dollar
Thank you
amounts
very
don't
much.
change.
I appreciate your clarification.
Normally, if we didn't do this at this time, this would be caught by Representative Jack's committee when we did all the lapses
Right.
at the end of next year. But this is a way of speeding this process up to get it done.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the community colleges portion of this bill? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Do we have someone available that wants to speak to the regarding spaces assigned for use for the members of the legislature? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Terry Poff. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the General Court of New Hampshire. And I can speak to the amendment if you'd like. So this is an amendment that's moving our control of the second floor of the annex to the fourth floor of the annex. That's space that the General Court is going to use in transition. We already have senators on the second floor, and we have our Rules Division on the second floor of the annex. The second floor of the annex is going to be part of Phase 2. The fourth floor of the annex is part of Phase 1 and completed, so that we can occupy the fourth floor west portion of the annex, which is pretty near completion, and we have some logistical work to do on our own up there to upfit it for the Senate. And then we're going to move our Rules Division from the second floor over to Granite Place later this summer. So it's part of our transition and part of our upfitting of that building for Senate and General Court use in general.
This is all part of the LOB reconfiguration and everything else, and this has been worked, if I'm not mistaken, between Senator Carson and Representative Packard. And my understanding is that the construction is now coming to a halt because we don't have the legality of who's going where yet until we pass this bill.
That's accurate. The Speaker and the President have come to an agreement on the use of the space currently in possession of the General Court, but I can't do any work on the fourth floor till we gain possession and control of it. And so I've engaged engineers to get the designs done, but I can't really do any work there until we actually have control of the space.
Any further questions? Representative Vallone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. So
Certainly.
this is a permanent move. This is not a
Correct.
temporary move, so
As permanent as things can be with the legislative process.
thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always good to be back in front of my old committee. I was a member of this years ago.
It's amazing how many of us keep wandering back here for some reason or another. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on SB 497 at this point in time. Now, our next hearing isn't scheduled until 10:30. And seeing as this bill is a little bit of a concern to a construction crew that's probably sitting out there right now waiting for word to it, if nobody has any objection, I would like to call the executive session to order on Senate Bill 497 at this time. Make it at 10:16. We'll give the clerk a couple of minutes to get ready and figure out in what orders we have to take this.
Are we voting on the amendment separately, or
We have to vote on the amendments separately. So I guess, go ahead.
do we have an amendment number?
We do.
1031, 2026,
Please.
1031.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move amendment 1031H.
Motion has been made and seconded. You've got plenty of time, sir. Up to another 12 minutes.
Did you want me to speak to it briefly while we're
Please.
So the amendment, although it's a replace all, the only change is on line 29 and following that, section 3 that repurposes the respiratory therapy money to LA Health Instructional Center. The rest of the bill is as it came to us from the Senate.
That's correct. That was my amendment, and that was at the request, after the Senate bill had already been put together with the community college and the construction part, the community college had a little bit of an amendment. So that's what we're voting on, and the complete bill.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, as a co-sponsor of the original bill, I have no problem with the way the Senate amendment. I have no problem with this amendment. So I urge everybody to vote yes on this amendment as moved by Representative Jack.
Thank you.
Who seconded that? Was it Senator Representative
Bohm.
Gray? Thank you.
Jack and Boone. And when the clerk is ready, he will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chairman Bogart,
Yes. Yes.
the clerk Representative Fidolfi is absent. The clerk votes aye. Representative Bohm. Aye. Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Lewis is absent. Representative Suter is absent. Representative Foote is absent. Representative Cloutier.
Yes.
Representative Jack.
Yes.
Representative Egger.
Aye.
Representative Faulkner.
Yes.
Representative Newman.
Yes.
Representative Vallone.
Yes.
Representative Juris is absent. Representative Rockmore.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, by a vote of 12 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 4 not voting, the amendment passes.
Okay, we're looking for a motion of ought to pass on, as amended, OTPA on Senate Bill 497.
Move approval.
Motion has been made and seconded by Representative Bohm. Once again, when the clerk is ready, please call the roll.
Vice Chairman Bogart.
Yes.
Clerk votes aye. Representative Bohm.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Lewis is absent. Representative Suter is absent. Representative Foote is absent. Representative Cloutier.
Yes.
Representative Jack.
Yes.
Representative Egger.
Aye.
Representative Faulkner. Yes. Representative Newman.
Yes.
Representative Vallone.
Yes.
Representative Juris is absent. Representative Rockmore. Mr. Chairman.
The chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, by a vote of 12 in the affirmative, none in the negative, 5 not voting, Senate Bill 424 passes as amended.
Do we have any objections to this going on the consent calendar? None? Consent calendar it is. Welcome, Representative Juris.
You're going to do the report?
Pardon?
The report? It's easy. I'll do it. I got it. Okay.
Okay, we've got 7 minutes I'm sorry. At this point in time, I'd like to close the executive session on Senate Bill 497. And we've got a short 7-minute recess before we move on to Senate Bill 529. All right, in the tradition of Public Works and Highways, it being around 10:30-ish, I'm going to call to order the public hearing for Senate Bill 529 FN, giving preference to lumber sourced in the United States on all state-funded building projects. And I apologize I got more cards than I thought I was going to have. Who was going to introduce this bill? Was it you, Representative Davis? Representative Davis, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 529 for Senator Rochford, as he could not be here today. It's a very simple bill. It gives preference to lumber sourced in New Hampshire on all state funding building projects. And the purpose of this bill is to bring value back to New Hampshire's timber industry, to ensure that New Hampshire homes can be built with for New Hampshire families with New Hampshire lumber. You should hear today some technical terms like SPF, which stands for spruce, pine, and fir, or SPFS, which stands for spruce, pine, and fir. The S stands for self. These are timber grading designations, and the only real difference between them is the Canadian border. Trees grown north of the political boundary are graded as SPF, while trees grown south of this is graded as SPFS. Under international design standards, Canadian SPF is viewed as stronger and denser, largely due to the cold climate growth conditions. But northern New Hampshire's climate, its soils and growing conditions are substantially similar to those in many parts of Canada. We grow the same species, spruce, pine, and fir, that fall under the SPF designation. Wood density should be determined by latitude and science, not by an arbitrary political border. I have a hard time believing a tree growing 50 feet over the Canadian border is inherently stronger than the same species growing in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, just a few yards away. You may hear today that Canada and the United States have different species mixes, and that is true to a degree. Canada has more black spruce, which grows slowly and is very dense and is stronger. The U.S. has more Norway spruce, which is classified as slightly weaker. When species are tested, they are brought to failure and the results are averaged. Black spruce gives Canada a statistical advantage, while Norway spruce lowers the U.S. average. This issue has been discussed for years. States like Maine and Vermont share in our same concerns. It is time for New Hampshire to have a seat at the table. Consider this. Much of Aroostook County in Maine is farther north than Quaticook or even Montreal. Northern New Hampshire and Vermont sit above portions of Canada to our west, yet our timber is considered weaker simply because it grows on the wrong side of the border. This bill does not prevent any licensed architect or engineer from specifying higher strength materials when required for safety or structural integrity. What it does is acknowledge the reality of our climate, our species, and our industry, and it gives New Hampshire timber a fair consideration that it deserves. I would like to point out a couple of things of interest. Black spruce, it is stronger. It grows very slow, it's very dense, but it grows primarily in northern Quebec. So everything below that is the same climate as us. You see very little black spruce. Black spruce grows so slow that it primarily is used for 2x3s and 2x4s, which is not structural lumber, that's studs. Now that's thrown into their mix, giving them an unfair advantage of having a stronger average. Norway spruce, it is a weaker species. They have it in Canada, we have it here. In the US, in New Hampshire, we mix that in with our average, which gives us a slightly weaker average. In Canada, they have their own grading designation, a separate stamp for that, so that doesn't get put into the mix. They do use it as a product, but it's considered a different species. That's an unfair advantage. And there's a safety factor. A very similar bill to this went through the House, and I listened to testimony by an engineer, and he said there's a 5 to 10% stronger, that Canadian lumber is 5 to 10% stronger. Now, there's a safety factor of 2 to 1 to 3 to 1, which makes it actually a moot point. They qualify it so that the safety factor is already built in, so that 5% really shouldn't matter. And I'd like to conclude my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Representative Bohm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking the question. You mentioned that New Hampshire lumber, but the bill says reference to lumber harvested in the United States. So your testimony said New Hampshire.
Well,
but it's
United States, yes, I apologize.
Okay. So could come from Vermont or Maine.
Well, we only have control in New Hampshire. I can't tell Vermont or Maine to,
No, I
You know.
mean lumber from.
right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Representative Bogart.
So by saying the United States, this lumber could come from anywhere, and so its exact species would be different from everywhere. Is that correct?
Well, if you're looking for spruce, pine, and fir, you won't see that south of Pennsylvania. So I know that I'm introducing this for Senator Rochford. I think the only thing, it may say United States, but it implies New Hampshire because we don't have control of other states. I'm looking for New Hampshire lumber to be treated equal to the Canadian grading designation.
Follow up. So as I used to sell lumber, building material and stuff like that in a previous life and stuff, and I know the company I work for sourced stuff out of South Carolina, and South Carolina would soar throughout the South, Georgia Pacific and stuff in reference, and a lot of that lumber was brought up this way to sell in construction projects. And so that's why I bring this question. When we say lumber across the country, a lot of lumber is brought in from the South to New Hampshire at one time. And so as if you're looking at giving New Hampshire an edge, then should this say New Hampshire and not the United States?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, Representative Faulkner.
Yes, thank you. Two questions. Can I ask who does the grading of one, type of lumber versus another? And is there a price differential between the SPF and the SPFS?
There is a price differential, and there's a speaker behind me that I believe can answer that question better than I can.
Representative Vallone.
Can you tell me how this bill would be enforced when it becomes law?
It doesn't mandate anything. It just gives New Hampshire, when the engineers and architects are drawing up their plans, it would have them give preference to New Hampshire lumber.
Follow up.
So give preference sounds pretty vague, and it is not enforceable.
Oh, it doesn't mandate it. So
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. I know you didn't write the bill, you were asked to introduce it, but similar to some of the other representatives, my concern is that we're trying to get a preference for our lumber industry and make sure that we're used it in New Hampshire. So I don't know if there's a reason why we couldn't amend the language to specifically talk about New Hampshire, but also on these projects, since I have an engineering and construction background as well, have we looked at what the cost differential is? I personally buy a lot of goods made in the United States and as many things as I can locally sourced, but I do pay a difference, and I'm willing to do that myself, but I'm not sure that the people of the state of New Hampshire would. And I'm wondering if we'd looked at what the cost differential would be on a particular project, just a general cost, so that we know what we would be doing. I'm in support of the idea, but I certainly would like to know how that would impact project costs.
To be honest with you, I do not know the answer to that question, but I would say that right now, SPF lumber sells on the market for a higher price than SPFS. And then what this would do is help bring value to New Hampshire's timber.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up?
So I understand that some other people are going to speak, so hopefully those people are going to be able to address those kind of things that we just made, brought up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Representative Cloutier.
Okay, and I think I chatted with you before the hearing, but I think it should be made clear for the record. This is just bill aimed at state-funded building projects. As I understand,
That's correct.
municipal school
No.
districts, et cetera, which, could be a constitutional problem, in my opinions, would you believe? Okay, but it's just state-funded building
State-funded.
project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very, Representative Edgar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for maybe taking this question. You might want to defer it, but it has to do with, this mentioned lumber harvested. What about the milling and all the work that's done on it? Is there any wood that goes across the border back and forth between being harvested and then being milled someplace, and maybe in Canada and then coming back? So maybe you want to defer it to somebody
No,
else coming up.
This is for wood harvested in New Hampshire to help give a fair playing field for New Hampshire loggers, truckers, sawmills, and landowners. But you'll be hard pressed to find somebody to admit this, but logs go to Canada all the time, and they're SPF S logs. They get milled there, graded there, come back as SPF, and I mean, it's not fair, it's not right, but I know it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Newman, did I miss anybody yet? We're all getting our wood in
Me, Mr. Chairman.
instructions here, education?
Yes, thank you. Following up on Representative Edgar's question, so is timber that is grown and harvested in New Hampshire, but goes across the border for further treatment and then comes back, is that considered New Hampshire lumber?
It is New Hampshire lumber. And
Right.
that's not supposed to happen, that when it comes back, it should be SPFS. Are you gonna find anybody to admit it? No. But I believe there's somebody that's gonna testify behind me that lives near the border and sees trucks go across every day.
I'll be glad to wait. Thank you.
Okay.
Representative Boyd.
Just a favor of Representative Davis, could I please have your written testimony for the minutes?
Can I email it to you? This has got hen scratching all over it, and
Hand scratching's fine.
okay.
Or if you can go down the hall and have. them
Yeah, I'll make a copy and I'll
That'd
get
be
it to
lovely.
you. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions for the hot seat? Seeing none, thank you very much. Probably be the last time you present a bill for Senate. Let him. Next up is Representative Michael Ouellette. Welcome to Public Works. And are you going to be in a position for questions? Or are we passing that on to somebody else also?
Thank you for hearing me, and committee, thank you for having me. I will try to answer the questions the best that I can.
Okay.
And I'll be very quick. I'm just going to expand on what Representative Davis said a little bit. There's two things we talk about, really, when we talk about timber, lumber. We're talking about two things. We're talking about timber, which are logs, and lumber, which is used for building. And like you said, there's a political line that separates the grading. And part of what the deal is on that is the financial side of it. Because timber that is cut in New Hampshire, logs, have a lesser value if it's milled in New Hampshire because it's SPFS. And then lumber that's produced in New Hampshire has a little bit less value because it's SPFS. Where we're saying it's the same quality of timber as what's right across the border. And a lot of the mills in New Hampshire and in Quebec, the New Hampshire mills are actually further north than the Quebec and Ontario mills, but they get a premium for their wood because of that grading. I live right on Route 3, 8 miles from the border, and I can assure you that I see softwood logs going from the States, from New Hampshire into Quebec every day. The other thing I see is lumber being produced going into Canada to be finally milled or dried and milled and coming back. So it goes up as SPFS, comes back as SPS. And the mill that's in Canada gets a premium for it, and the New Hampshire mill doesn't because of the grading. And there's a huge mill. Like I said, I live 8 miles from the border. Within 10 miles of my house, there's a huge softwood mill in Quebec. And I can tell you, I've seen many New Hampshire trucks unloading New Hampshire logs in their pile, and I don't see it being sorted from the Canadian logs. And so I think that on the financial side, our loggers are getting shorted a little bit, and our mills are getting shorted a little bit because they can't have the same grading as the Quebec mills.
Representative Bogart.
So why don't we change the grading if the material is the same either side of that latitude, then why not change the grading instead of the preference?
There is going to, you're going to see, I don't know if it's coming to your committee or another committee, but there is a House bill that went through Recreation and Resource Development that did exactly that and went through on consent, changing the geopolitical line to the 43rd parallel. And I think there's a Senate bill very similar that's going, I think, to another committee doing the exact same thing. But this is just to show, we have some mills in northern New Hampshire, one in particular. They saw enough lumber to build 35 houses a day. And their timber, their lumber is just as qualified as what's coming out of Quebec, which has many big mills. And same with our lumber from Maine and Vermont. And we're just saying, hey, take a look and give us a preference. Look at the New Hampshire lumber. And there was a question saying, well, is it more expensive? When it goes to the SPF, it might go up in price a little bit. But when we're trucking lumber from New Hampshire into New Hampshire, rather than lumber into New Hampshire from Quebec or Ontario, yeah, there is going to be a savings because of just the transportation costs.
Follow up, please. So going back to my question, thank you for answering for the longitude portion, but the code, why don't we change the code?
The code that lumber is being graded at, and we'll see the New Hampshire Timberland Owners Association expand on this because he's a little more of an expert, but it's not a governmental code. It's a industry code. So we don't have the authority to change that industry code. It's something that they'd have to change themselves.
One final follow-up.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's Highway 16 in the northern portion. There's a huge lumber mill, I do believe, and I see that. So they all produce the same trees that a few miles further up the road is different, and that becomes a lesser price because of where it's located, is what you're saying? So they're at a more economical disadvantage due to their location?
That's correct. And a lot of the timber that you speak about at that mill comes from 50 or 60 miles north, which is, in Pittsburgh and that area. And again, it's the same exact timber that's, 100 feet on the other side of the Canadian border. So they are at an economic disadvantage.
Any further questions? Representative Newman.
Yes, can you give me an actual example of the piece of lumber, the price differential, or would somebody coming behind you be more prepared to do that?
I think someone behind me, we have someone from the New Hampshire Home Builders Association, but that's a very difficult question because being in the industry, timber or lumber is a commodity, and it's just like oil. The price is changing by the minute every day. He might be able to give you a percentage and what the difference usually is, but as far as a firm price, I think it's a pretty difficult question to answer.
Thank you very much for your testimony, sir.
Thank you very much.
Next up, I think we have a couple of reluctants, but we're going to welcome them anyway. It's camera time, for crying out loud. Wesley Robichaud, up next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. Wesley Robichaud. I represent the New Hampshire Retail Lumber Association as well as Coastal Forest Products based out of Bow, New Hampshire. I live in Sandown, New Hampshire. I'm looking forward to addressing as many of the questions as have been presented. I'd like to give just a brief background as to what got us to where we are today. It's going to be a very short history lesson, and that is prior to 1991. Lumber was strength graded based on the value of the tree. Those have been in, a few of you that have been in the industry for a period of time. We looked at the strength of a spruce tree, the strength of a Doug fir tree, or the strength of a southern yellow pine tree. And that's what determined did we use a 2x8 or a 2x10 to build a floor. In 1991, there was a change, and that change was, the determination was made that grading of lumber has a tremendous effect on the strength value of lumber. If you think of a piece of wood, it has a big knot in the middle of it. That makes it a weak piece of wood. A piece of wood that has no knot in it becomes a very strong piece of wood. So that's in 1991. We were in a position where now we have to test by size, which we had done, but now by grade within each size. So the American Lumber Standards was involved with the industrial agency in this region, the New England Lumber Manufacturers Association, to perform all of the testing of our species by grade. The Canadian Lumber Association did their own testing. That's where the wheels fell off the bus. The Canadians tested differently than the Americans tested. We believe they both tested fairly, but whether it be the type of grade that the quality of the grade that was chosen, or whether it be the species that was chosen, or the elevation that the tree was grown on, the Canadian wood tested higher than the American wood. It didn't pose a problem at that time because everything was SPF. Everything was SPF going into it, and there was no differentiation between northern and southern lumber. We bought and sold wood. I was very involved with it at the time. We bought wood and sold wood as commodities as needed. In 1991, we needed to differentiate ourselves from SPF, and that's where the designation of SPF-S came into it. It went entirely unnoticed. It went completely unnoticed. Then in the late 90s, now we introduce engineered lumber into our buildings. Now that we introduce engineered lumber into our buildings, now we have to look at the strength factors of everything that's being incorporated with the engineered material. Otherwise, we can't say that the engineered material is going to work. So we look at what the values are of SPF, and it's become commonplace from the late 90s fast forward, and it absolutely defies that we could go this long and still call it all SPF. And that's why, to the point of it being awareness as opposed to being an enforceable law, we're trying to take the first step so that designers, architects, and engineers recognize the fact that if you want American wood in this building, you have to refer to it as SPF-S. If the engineer uses the values based on the Canadian wood SPF, then they're not going to allow SPF-S. And one of our next speakers, Sarah Beltates from Beltates Lumber Company, will talk about the difficulties that creates, not only in the job site, but to the inventorying of lumber. So is the piece of wood different? We're making the argument that it really isn't different. It was mentioned by a previous speaker of a safety value. The safety value, what that refers to is when we're engineering a building, we don't allow that wood to span every bit that it's rated to span. We hold back and don't make it span everything allowable. That's the safety factor, whether it's 5 or 10%. It easily encompasses the difference between SPF-S and SPF. In fact, if you look at NELMA's span tables today, only in single members does that strength factor between north and south wood make any difference at all. And in those circumstances, we're using engineered lumber in those applications. So it's really, we're trying to make awareness that if you're going to specify for American lumber, you specify SPF-S. And if it is a state building, we would like to see New Hampshire mills being used in that equation. Question that I'll answer is that it was the New England Lumber Manufacturers Association that designated SPF. So that would be just the northeast mills. That would not include southern yellow pine, Doug fir, or some of the other areas that produce wood that is certainly stronger and is at times spec'd. And when that's spec'd, that's not the discussion that we're having today.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for taking my question. But I looked back over the bill here a few minutes ago, and I think the question that I have, we're talking about technical specifications, whether it's SPF, the northern version or the southern version. But the bill doesn't specify whether it's northern version or southern version specifically that I see. What the bill is, from my understanding, is a very simple bill that we're actually asking that there's a preference for U.S. Supplied lumber versus other sources. And there's no technical specification in here that I see. So we're getting into the technical reasons why you think it qualifies for the structural lumber for homes and that type of thing, but that's not shown in the bill. We're simply saying we want a preference for U.S. lumber to be on New Hampshire projects. Am I correct?
Correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm the king of questions, but so I don't know why we're going down this road on so many technical questions when it's a very simple question that we're being asked, whether or not we want to provide New Hampshire lumber or U.S. lumber. And as some of the other representatives clearly indicated, we would prefer, if we're going to do this, that we have some preference for New Hampshire lumber for New Hampshire projects. So that's kind of a question for you, Mr. Chairman, on why we're going down this road so technically. Thank you.
I allow people to ask the questions that they feel are necessary to make their own judgment, but I'm also the one that cuts them off at some point in time. And Representative Jack is going to get a very, very short question, and followed by Representative Boyd, and that'll be the questions for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for educating us. I tried to understand the Senate testimony. Is it as simple as when someone writes the specifications for the material to be used, they write SPF as a matter of course, and we'd like them to write SPFS?
That is 100% correct.
Representative Brown, see how this gets simpler? Representative Boyd, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Robichaud, thank you for your testimony, and thank you for taking my question. You didn't testify to the question that I'm about to ask, but I think you're uniquely qualified to answer the question. It was previous testimony that New Hampshire lumber is being harvested, then crossing the border and being milled in Canada, and then it comes back over. So my question is, are tariffs being collected on U.S. lumber that's coming back across the border?
Is what being collected? I'm sorry.
Tariffs,
Tariffs?
federal tariffs. And I apologize for putting you on the spot, but that's my question.
My understanding is that federal tariffs would not be applied in that scenario for the very reason that U.S. lumber that crosses the border to be remanufactured in Canada comes back into the U.S. as U.S. lumber. It is not Canadian lumber. That is SPF. It does not convert to SPF-S because it crosses the border. It is the country of harvest. That is the designation.
Follow up.
That being said, there was previous testimony that was provided that states that New Hampshire loggers were going over to a Quebec milling location, and it was just wasn't being dumped in an American pile, or just all being commingled into one big old pile. That being said, how are you able to tell the difference between Canadian wood versus United States wood, when the testimony's been, you go 5 feet across the border and you can't really tell the difference between what is what.
I have to believe that there is the potential for some mixing of logs, yes. The way the designation reads today is it is the country of harvest. And should the labor being applied to the logs convert it to Canadian wood, it would be subject to tariff, and I have to think that they are trying to avoid tariff as much as we are.
I appreciate your candor. Thank you.
That concludes the questions for Mr. Robichaud. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, I'd like to call Sarah Beltes. Welcome to Public Works. I'm sure we'll be shorter on you as we go along.
I hope so. Hi, my name is Sarah Beltate. Thank you for taking the time today. I'm fourth generation with Beltate's Lumber Company. We have 9 locations in the state of New Hampshire. I'm coming at you from a retail perspective on this. We have, over the last 10 years, contracted with Mylan Lumber up in northern New Hampshire for the vast majority of our lumber in all of our locations. Because of this SPF versus SPFS designation, we have had to cut our contracts by about a third to New Hampshire mills to get Canadian lumber into our locations. For several years, we had dual inventory, which becomes an inventory fiasco because you can't tell the difference between a 2x4 from Canada and a 2x4 from New Hampshire. We have since transferred 3 of our locations to strictly Canadian wood because we were getting caught on specs when every spec says SPF, and a building inspector goes and sees the stamp on the wood, and the stamp on the wood says SPFS, and therefore it's out of code. We've had to replace walls. We've had to replace first floors of buildings with the appropriate material because we supplied incorrect material on that. When it comes to cost, a 2x610 is probably 30 cents more coming from Canada than New Hampshire. But that 30 cents becomes significantly greater when we've provided the wrong type of material. So I'm open to questions. We're just looking for the preference at the engineer at the very beginning of a project to say, does it meet the code? Is the building not going to collapse if we use SPFS? 95% of the time, it's not going to, especially up in New Hampshire. The grades are fine. What it ends up being when it hits my desk or our company, it's already been stamped, it's already been approved. Nobody's going to go back to have it redrawn, and therefore nobody's going to pay that price. So we've had to have the dual inventory.
Thank you. Representative Newman, I believe your question was just answered by the price, and I will accept one more question from Representative Bogart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. My question is, in the retail market, when we start to say S with the S added to it, do we have to now start segregating on the retail floor all the different lumbers and identify it so that when it is sold, that it's the correct wood being sold? Because I come from doing this, and that's why I asked. The only different grades we had were 1 and 2, and now you're adding another grade. So is that gonna? That's my question. Is do we now have to have another set of part numbers, item numbers, and stuff, and pricing for that?
I understand your question. What we did previously is we had 2 different SKUs for the different material, which ended up being a fiasco because we're now relying on our load pullers to make sure they're actually pulling from the appropriate pile. We have since changed our SKUs. We have everything under 1 SKU. So like a 2x610, 2610, that is our SKU. And it just says number 2 and better KD. We leave it at that we understand. So Therefore, one of our locations that has SPF sells the same thing as one of our locations that has SPFS. We have now known for bigger projects, typical homes isn't the case. It's more commercial, federally funded, state funded projects that are requiring, architects, engineers stamping it. We just know what location it has to come out of. It's no different to the consumer. If anything, we have taken a margin cut on it because we still have to be priced effectively for the retail sector, which is SPFS. So we take a little bit of a margin hit in the locations that have the SPF.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Baltes.
Thank you for your time.
And our final speaker, and I'm not going to allow questions for him, is Mr. Jason Stack, who will probably give us a wrap-up of everything that we think we need to know.
Less than 2 minutes. Thank you. For the record, I'm Jason Stock. I'm Executive Director of the New Hampshire Timberland Owners Association. We represent timberland owners, loggers, foresters, sawmills. And I come today in support of this legislation. As was previously stated, this is not making any mandates. And the real thrust of it is, and I think we kind of got here, it's about raising awareness, sending a message about lumber grading and the importance of supporting local industries, local lumber. And that really is the crux of this. I think Representative Brown kind of got to it at the end there. That's what this is about. And we come in support of it. We think it's important that the state, to the extent that they can, and that it's reasonable, that they support local jobs, local landowners, as well as loggers and truckers. With that, I'll conclude my testimony, and I would say I'd answer any questions, but I think that
I didn't ask you.
Thank you.
Okay.
But thank you for your deep dive into the dark art of lumber grading, and we hope you'll support this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That concludes the public hearing on SB 529. It being 11-ish, again, I'm keeping very close to my schedule here. I'm going to open up the public hearing for SB 629, renaming the new roundabout on Route 302 at the East Conway Road intersections, the Oliveria Circle. And looking for a pink card from the esteemed Senator McConkey.
I do have one. How are you, Senator?
Oh. Thank you. What don't I have? Please.
Very nice.
I can always hear it. I can see it. Well, for the others, I mean, I plan to.
Senator McConkey, welcome back to Public Works and Highways.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of Public Works and Highways. I'm here today on a solemn occasion to introduce Senate Bill 629 to rename the new roundabout at the intersection of Route 302 and East Conway Road to become the Oliveria Circle, to honor David and Kathy Oliveria, who tragically lost their lives on Labor Day 2018 at a collision at the intersection that this roundabout replaced.
Being sensitive to families' loss and knowing the necessity to receive town approval, I've enclosed a letter from the town of Conway with their overwhelming support of this initiative. I'm also joined by Representative Woodcock and Representative Brown and my other fellow representatives in the area, Page and Bucco, who are all in support of this. I'm also joined here, most importantly, by Kathy's sister, Pam Clarkson, who would like to offer testimony on behalf of her sister and brother-in-law. With that, I'm hoping at the conclusion that the committee could find a way to pass this out, ought to pass today. Thank you so much for your attendance.
Thank you for your testimony, Senator. Representative Woodcock, would you like to say a few words?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I looked in Falmouth, I just finished getting rid of 6 inches of snow in North Conway. So we had, down here I see you have just nice sunny weather. I will also support this bill. Actually, Senator McConkey was chair when this first came to the 10-year plan several years ago because of the multiple accidents at that site. Unfortunately, this wasn't there when those folks lost their lives on the motorcycle coming out of the East Conway Road. However, the new site that is there is working extremely well. The potential accident rate is down. People are flowing through comfortably. And I thank you all for the work to getting here this far. And I would appreciate it if you honor those that did actually lose their lives at that site. I'll be happy to take questions if the chair allows it.
Chair allows it. Is there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome Pamela Clarkson. Welcome to Public Works. Could you push the button on the mic, please?
Yep.
Little red button. Thank you.
Good morning. First and foremost, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for all of your efforts in planning and constructing the new Rotary where my sister Kathy and her husband were, while riding their motorcycle on that dreadful day, were killed. I cannot begin to tell you the difference that Rotary has made in my life. My house is only 2 miles away on East Conway Road, so there's never a way that I can really avoid that intersection. And each time I approached it, I would be filled with anxiety. I'd be afraid to go, and I would have these visions of the actual accident and flashbacks. But I'm happy to say that ever since that Rotary was placed, I no longer have that anxiety and I don't have the visuals anymore. So I'm extremely grateful for that. I'd also like to thank Senator McConkey for listening to my story and for sponsoring this bill with nothing but respect and compassion. Our family and friends and I feel that naming the Rotary Olivera Circle would be the most appropriate thing to do in their memory. It will never take away the grief and the tremendous loss that we all feel, but it would be a place where we could honor and commemorate them. 2 lives lost too soon, doing what they loved in a place they adored and traveled to with their family for more than 4 decades. It was truly their heaven on earth. I thank you once again for your continued commitment to improving the safety of our roadways and your dedication on ongoing efforts in saving lives here in the state of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm now going to close the public hearing on SB 629. Traditional 5 seconds has gone by. I'm now going to open up the executive session on SB 629. Representative Boyd.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of Senate Bill 629.
I will second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Before I ask the clerk to call the roll, I want you to know that I don't know that we had enough copies of this. We do have a letter from the town of Conway approving this, and how the signs are going to be paid for, so it's not going to be taken care of by the state. Just want that for the record. And when the clerk is ready, please call the roll. Take your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chairman Bogart,
Yes.
clerk votes aye. Representative Bohm,
Yes.
Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Lewis is absent. Representative Suter is absent. Representative Foote is absent. Representative Cloutier,
Yes.
Representative Jack,
Yes.
Representative Edgar,
Aye.
Representative Faulkner,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Vallone,
Yes.
Representative Juris,
Yes.
Representative Rockmore,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, by a vote of 13 in the affirmative, none in the negative, 4 absent, Senate Bill 629 passes.
Thank you. I'd like to question the family. We can put this on the consent agenda, which means there wouldn't be much of a hearing. But if you would like to attend the day that it is, we can special order it so that it starts in the beginning of it, and we can have it out on the floor for a vote. But it's up to you. If you don't want to attend, we can just put it on the consent calendar.
When would that be?
Don't know. That we don't have any scheduling. So you don't want it on the consent calendar at this point? Correct. It will not be on the consent calendar. You can do the report.
Marty's going to do it.
Who? No. Steve.
Oh, he's going to do the report. Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other business, I close the executive session on Senate Bill 629. And we've got about a 12-minute recess. You're quite Give everybody a chance. It being 11:30-ish, once again, we are going to open up the public hearing on Senate Bill 632 FN relative to a certain highway sign in Concord. And I will first call Senator Tara Reardon. Welcome to Public Works. A new face here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's a pleasure to be at Public Works. My co-sponsor on this bill, Tracy Bricky, is also here if you want to kill two birds with one stone and have us
By
up here
all
together.
means, by all means. We're all about efficiency here.
Thank you, sir. I have put this bill in on behalf of a constituent who is the current owner of this sign that sits just off exit 12 here in Concord, Steve Dupree. And I believe he has submitted written testimony. I checked this morning. They said they had dropped 30 copies off. So you get to see some of the history of this sign that I recall being there when I was a kid here in Concord. It predates both the federal and the state regulations about advertising along highway, and I would venture to guess the interstate was probably a 2-lane road back when that sign was first there, advertising the Brick Tower Motel, which was there before. So this bill comes before you despite the fact that the sign is grandfathered and currently advertises a Marriott that's 3 exits away, also owned by Mr. Dupree, and at one time held the Chamber of Commerce Visitors Center. That was part of the reason for that sign being there. And the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center is now located down on Main Street. It's not there. He is proposing a change of ownership for the sign, and it would be to a nonprofit or our Chamber of Commerce. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce has another in-town organization that does events for downtown that may be the more suitable owner for it. That's yet to be determined. But with those changes, he would like to memorialize that limited use of that sign in statute. There was actually a statute a bunch of years ago that affirmed the right to have this sign here. So the bill would limit the use of this to civic and nonprofit events in the city of Concord. Concord enjoys a lot of non-taxable inhabitants. It's churches, government buildings, schools, St. Paul's School, a huge number of acres. And about a little over 40% of our land isn't taxable here in the city of Concord. So we like to enhance our downtown events, our economy, our retailers, our businesses in any way that we can. And Mr. Dupree and I both believe that this sign gives the ability, sitting way back at exit 12, which is just before the T-Bones and the True Hilton that sits right there, the ability to advertise downtown events there gives you exit 13, 14, and 15 to get off the highway, whether it's black ice hockey, we have a great coffee festival, we have market days, we're going to have some great 250th anniversary celebrations here in Concord. And that's the opportunity to enhance business and give people who are going through the city of Concord in droves, starting on Thursday through Monday or Tuesday now, not just the weekend, a more likely chance of seeing something that may want them to get off the highway and spend some money at one of our businesses. So this sign is prior to exit 12 right now. It's about 300 feet from the interstate, and the current law, although this predates it, is 500 feet from the interstate, does sit back nicely from the street there. And as Mr. Dupree has said in his testimony here, that we are totally agreeable about meaningful restrictions on this sign. No greater than what's permitted under Concord's sign ordinance, capping the frequency that the message can change on that sign, restricting commercial advertising, only enough to support the sign operation. So in fact, it's not a burden to the city the Chamber of Commerce or whatever entity ends up owning this. So while the right to the sign already exists, this bill would serve a distinct framework to transfer the sign to a nonprofit and govern how it's used going forward.
No. She did a great job, and anything I say would just be a repeat.
That's what we like, short and sweet. Representative Jack.
Thank you, and thank you for appearing. I've tried to figure out where this sign is. Is it on the property of the hotel and T-Bones as it exists today? And does that hotel own the land where the sign is? The fact that I learned that it's dark could be why I haven't been able to see it so far.
Yeah. It is to the south side of the property that is owned by the Hilton and the T-Bones, and Mr. Dupree does own those properties also.
Okay. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for answering my question. So on the fiscal impact, it says legislative budget assistance says it's determined that the total fiscal impact is less than $10,000 for 2026 through 2029. Based on what I read in the bill and the letter, why would it be any impact, fiscal impact to us?
We don't believe that there is any fiscal impact to the state of New Hampshire other than the Bureau Administrator from DOT who comes to the hearings to tell us what DOT's.
Okay, maybe he can answer that question when he gets up here. All right, thank you very much.
Representative Bogart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. If this sign is already grandfathered in, why do we need legislation to grant you the use of the sign if it's grandfathered in?
I believe Mr. Dupree would like to, right now, it advertises a property that's 3 exits away. And in fact, if this land was sold at some point, then that sign could probably continue to do that. That was at a time where the Marriott was brand new and the Chamber of Commerce was there, and that's not necessary to advertise a property 3 exits away right now, and it's forbidden under current law. But in fact, Mr. Dupree would like to see the use of this sign limited. If he's going to give up ownership for it, he doesn't want any commercial advertising or anything like that on that. He would like it to be dedicated to the use of improving events in downtown Concord.
Follow up.
So would this sign encumber the land of if it's sold futurely and the landowner, a future landowner wanted to remove the sign, this legislative action here would prevent the new landowner for doing anything with the sign?
This sign is anticipating that the ownership of the sign is going to be transferred. He will never own it. He won't own it after it's transferred. The exclusive rights to own it and decide what's on there will be with the Chamber of Commerce or the nonprofit that owns it. And they have their responsibilities under whatever their mission is.
Representative Faulkner.
Thank you, Chair Reynolds. One of the clauses here would prohibit the city of Concord from being a sponsor. What is the purpose of that?
I didn't go into any depth on this, but the city of Concord doesn't want to be, we don't want the city of Concord to be necessarily the promoter of things that are happening downtown. That's a burden on the city to hire somebody that's going to maintain that sign, make sure that sign's paid for, figure out what events are going to go on that sign, when that duty is better left to those that are, whose mission it is, like the Chamber of Commerce, or we have another group called In Town Concord that promote those kinds of events. So the idea is for the responsibility to lie with them, not with the city of Concord. And he may have perceived, and I wasn't in on the conversations with the city of Concord, that there was some conflict for them.
Representative Rockmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you say that the sign is legally, this letter says that the sign is legally grandfathered. So I just would like to know how rock solid is this legal conclusion? Do we know of anyone who has challenged the grandfather status of the sign?
I do not know of anybody who has challenged that, but that's typical in property law, that when you have a use that predates laws that come after that, then you get to keep that use. Mr. Dupree's a lawyer and I'm a lawyer, and I don't see where there's anything to challenge.
Thank you.
I guess my question would be, so as far as the ownership of the sign, the property that it's on is also going to be transferred at the same time? Or is Mr. Dupree keeping the property and just giving up the sign?
I believe, and I will check with him and get back to you if the answer is any different than that. It's the ownership of the sign that's being
The
transferred.
sign itself. And then my follow-up question is, granted, the Chamber of Commerce might be the next best thing for this, but what's going to stop the Chamber of Commerce from picking if they're tired of it? And I know it's going to be limited to nonprofits, but what if they pick a nonprofit that's not popular at the time, or politically based nonprofit? Do we have anything preventing that?
I'll answer that two ways, if I might. The first is the Chamber of Commerce is here, and she can
I saw that.
she can probably answer that. But he's transferring the sign with the condition that it promotes downtown civic events. So within the definition of that, there may be a less popular nonprofit.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Edgar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for answering my questions. I was a little confused on parts of this, but is the sign still in the location it's always been when it was initially approved? Or initially put in? I guess it maybe wasn't even approved at the time. The other question would do with the, if I can follow up.
Please.
The grandfathering, again, I'm not a lawyer either, but there's a grandfathering in this case. Is it allowed to be transferred in a sense? Just because it happened before the big bill was made, you actually can transfer this particular grandfathering, it's felt?
So the first answer to the first question is yes. It's in the exact same location it was when the Brick Tower Motel was there many decades ago. And grandfathering, yes, it does. That's a property right, and that property right does transfer with the property. And if somebody wanted to cease that right, if the city of Concord or the state of New Hampshire wanted to cease that right, that would be a taking, and the owner of the property would be entitled to compensation for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further, I'm sorry, Representative Bogert.
Just one last follow-up to clarify. If the landowner sells and the new landowner, this is clarifying, and the new landowner says, I don't want the sign on my property, I'm going to develop it for something else without that sign, will the new landowner have that right?
So I will, I'll answer that two ways too. This is probably too close to the highway to be developed. I'm not sure you could put a building there, but you may want to take the sign away. And I think it's the same answer that I gave Representative Edgar. It's a property right that the Chamber of Commerce or somebody would hold. And if the current property owner wanted that to cease, they could buy that right.
Representative Juris for the final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this sign going to be converted to a LCD scrolling sign?
The city of Concord has some real limitations on what's allowed. This will be a interior lit sign that will be changeable. I think the limitation is it can change 4 times a day, but the city has some real limitations on that. And a part of this is the sign would have to, it could only be the size and the limitations that the city of Concord currently has in its regulations.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your testimony, ladies.
Thank you.
And at this point in time, I'd like to call Brianna Marceau from the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce, accepting all this responsibility now. Hot seat. Welcome to Public Works.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson Mills and members of the committee for taking my testimony today. I also want to thank the sponsors of this bill, Senator Reardon and Representative Brickey, and also Steve Dupree for the opportunity that passage of this bill would allow. So my name is Brianna Marceau. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce, testifying on behalf of the chamber to support this bill. As you saw from Mr. Dupree's testimony, he gives you the history of the sign. I'm here to talk about the future of the sign. At its core, this legislation creates an opportunity to better connect people traveling through our region to what's happening downtown. Every day, thousands of cars pass our community without stopping, often unaware of the events and cultural activities just minutes off of the highway. Our mission at the Chamber is to promote a vibrant, sustainable business economy, and this sign would be a powerful tool to do exactly that. By highlighting downtown events and activities, we turn this pass-through traffic into visitors, people who eat locally, who shop, spend money, and support our small businesses. Our downtown businesses depend on visibility. They don't have marketing budgets of national chains, and a well-placed sign that promotes community events can make a real difference in their foot traffic and economic activity. This is especially important for seasonal events such as festivals, nonprofit activities, things that bring energy and life to Main Street, a few of which Senator Reardon shared with you. Many of these events and festivals are hosted by a local nonprofit called In Town Concord. Their board of directors is also supportive of this bill and I believe has submitted a letter for you. It's important to note that these signs can be expensive to operate. So in addition to some of the other stipulations that Mr. Dupree worked into this, this language, we also have limitations on how we are able to collect funds to operate the signs. And allowing limited downtown businesses to advertise helps promote the overall mission of the sign, helps offset these costs, and makes the project financially sustainable without public or city funding. So finally, as referenced earlier, this bill does not require the city to own, operate, or endorse the sign. It simply allows a responsible nonprofit to manage an existing legally recognized location for a clearly defined community benefit. From the Chamber's perspective, this opportunity creates a welcome front door to our community and our downtown, supports small businesses, strengthens the economic heart of our city. We believe this is a smart, targeted opportunity to advance economic vitality. And for those reasons, we strongly support this legislation. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take additional questions.
Representative Cloutier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, and I'm listening to the sponsors, this sign now, is it a traditional billboard that is just whatever paper and has just one message at a time and it may be changed every once in a while with lights, or is it the more updated modern bit that can be changed quite frequently? And I know the sponsors alluded to something about being changed up to 4 times a day. Is that correct? I just want to be clear what we're talking about here now.
As it exists right now, it's actually not lit up at all because for the reasons stated earlier, it's expensive to operate. And so this model that we're putting in front of you would allow that to take place. The last bit of the amendment states that this bill authorizes the chamber or another successor to install and maintain one advertising device. So it is likely that the shape of the existing sign may change. But we, as mentioned earlier, we plan to follow all city guidelines and rules in creating that sign.
Thank you.
Representative Newman.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to get a mental picture of this. I tried to look for the sign on the way up here this morning, but I must have missed it. Will it physically have to be changed if there is some notice or advertisement up there, meaning somebody's got to go and physically do it, or is it handled off-site electronically?
The plans right now are to handle it off-site electronically. Yes. And to add, because I believe a lot of you will now be looking for this sign after leaving this meeting, to help you out a little bit, the actual sign post in the top of the sign is like a dark teal color, almost like the back of that wall. So if that helps you to locate it, you can see it from the highway, of course, but also if you're driving, on the normal bypass, you can see it from the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, if that's helpful. I'm not endorsing.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Lee Barons. Barons or Barons? Barons. From New Hampshire DOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Lee Baronis. I'm the administrator of the Bureau of Traffic at New Hampshire DOT. Part of the Bureau of Traffic is the Office of Outdoor Advertising Control. The department does not take a position on this bill, but we're here to provide information for your consideration and to answer any questions. The department did prepare a fiscal note for the proposed legislation. A brief history. The Highway Beautification Act of 1965 and subsequent amendments was established in part to control outdoor advertising along America's highways to protect public investment in highway and promote safety and recreational value in public travel. This federal act was codified into 23 U.S.C. 131 and is currently in effect. In 1971, an agreement between the state of New Hampshire and the Federal Highway Administrator. In that agreement, the state agreed to effectively control outdoor advertising consistent with the Highway Beautification Act. We made a deal. The state subsequently established statutes RSA 236, sections 69 through 88, and the associated administrative rules that are consistent with the Highway Beautification Act and the 1971 agreement and all the accessory federal regulations. Our Office of Outdoor Advertising Control facilitates compliance through permitting of signs and the enforcement of the rules. In this proposed legislation, understanding all of the merits that have been presented to you today, and I don't disagree with the merits of advertising for great activities in Concord. But I wanted to share this part. The proposed legislation appears written to grant the proposed advertising device an exception to all provisions of the outdoor advertising control statutes and any of the associated rules. This would not only allow this specific off-premise device to be located within 500 feet of an interchange of an interstate, but it appears to exempt it from all regulation under the outdoor advertising control statutes. So limitations on size, lighting, location, height, advertising content, and any required permits and fees would not be applicable. The only entity regulating the sign would be the city of Concord, to my understanding. So implications for this committee to consider. If the advertising device were erected, the state would not be compliant with the federal law or the original agreement. Provisions in both the Highway Beautification Act and New Hampshire's agreement state that failure to fulfill the agreement may result in withholding up to 10% of the state's allocation of federal highway funds. With annual funding of 200 to 300 million, this would equate to 20 to 30 million in federal highway revenue that could be withheld until corrected. The Highway Administration is aware of and is monitoring this pending litigation. Slip of the tongue, legislation. While they do not make it a point to interfere with state legislation, they communicated with the DOT in January and clearly stated that if the bill becomes law and a property seeks DOT approval, it is expected by Federal Highway that any approval or denial is made in accordance with the agreement and the Highway Beautification Act and other applicable federal requirements. Kind of puts us in a between a rock and a hard place. So other implications to consider, the location of the sign. I know many of you tried to see where it is. It currently advertises Courtyard by Marriott. It's on the right-hand side as you go northbound. As you exit the as you pass the on-ramp from Interstate 89, it's on the right-hand side, near the Irving, the backside of the Irving truck stop. There's an Irving sign on there, up there as well, which is on premise. The Courtyard by Marriott sign is adjacent to that. It is considered an off-premise advertising sign because it doesn't advertise for something that is happening on that parcel. And so that puts it in the jurisdiction of the outdoor advertising rules. On-premise signs are not regulated. So if you can picture where that is, you've got the on-ramp from I-89, and then you've got the off-ramp for exit 12 south, and then the loop ramp for 12 north up to downtown Concord. So for those who may commute there, or those who are there on Thursday afternoons or Friday afternoons, that's an area that gets very congested. So part of the reason for this provision of proximity to interchanges, this provision in the Highway Beautification Act, is to promote safety, not to have distractions in the proximity of interchanges. And so that is why the rules say no advertising device within 500 feet. This location is within 500 feet. Also, another implication to consider is that when we create special exceptions to rules, it makes it difficult to be fair and consistent with others who the rules do apply. We've denied many permits for similar situations, and we will probably be confronted with these same situations in the future. So having an exception is makes it challenging to explain to others. And then one other comment, I noticed the use of the word grandfathered, and I just wanted to clarify my understanding of the situation. The Brick Tower Motel had a sign in place, and apparently it's before the interstate was constructed. That advertised for the motel, which was immediately adjacent on the same parcel. When it, back in 2000 to 2002, when the desire for the current sign was made known, and a permit was sought from our office, we had to deny that because of the proximity to the interchange, and it was because it was for a off-premise advertisement for advertising for something that is not on that parcel. So that put it in the jurisdiction, and because of that, we had to deny that permit. Subsequently, there was legislation that was passed in session law in 2003 that made an exception for that sign, for that purpose, and for that owner. And it is that legislation that allowed us to permit, and now Federal Highway Administration is aware of that sign that is also non-conforming at this point. So, I think those are the points I wanted to make. I'm happy to take questions.
I'll ask the first one before I recognize anybody else. So if I'm hearing all of this right, that sign can stay as is. It can't be changed to electronic, or can it be changed to electronic?
Under the current, it depends on who you ask. If
Okay.
the Federal Highway Administration was asked, they would say, no, that sign needs to be removed. You
Yeah.
need to enforce our rules.
Okay.
Under the statute that was passed in 2003, that sign, which is specific for that owner, would not necessarily allow it to change the content.
So that was my part two of the question. So if indeed it's at the T-Bones, Hilton, whatever motel it is, that sign is technically grandfathered to stay there, same size. They possibly could get away with making it electronic, but it would still have to advertise T-Bones and whatever else is on premise.
If we're advertising on premise, it would not be subject to our the outdoor advertising control statutes.
Okay. Now, Representative Faulkner.
Getting to the crux of the issue here, I appreciate the testimony. When was the last time that this sign advertised something that was located on the premises or adjacent premises?
As far as I know, the Brick Tower Motel.
And when did that close?
I don't know.
Okay.
A long time ago.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Malone.
So when, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for taking my question. So when that legislation was passed around, was it 2002, 2003, what happened? So did New Hampshire lose any money then?
No.
Can you explain that? I'm sorry for the.
I'm guessing, but given the fact that Federal Highway Administration representatives seemed surprised that there was a sign already there, they may not have noticed. We did not make it known to them.
Yeah.
But they know now.
They know now.
Hence the letter. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for taking my question. So since it is grandfathered, supposedly, and we passed legislation allowing it in the past, is there a variance project, since it's a historical sign, for the Highway Transportation Administration?
There, as far as I know, it's not the original sign that was there. That it was rebuilt at the time of the 2003 legislation.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
But I could be wrong, but I don't believe that was the Brick Tower sign at the with just a name change.
So I guess the point is, though, there's been a sign there since 1954 or something like that, right? They never noticed it before. They've noticed it now. Now they're saying we're in violation. So now, is there a variance process for that, since it's a historical location of signage that we've used and it hasn't really caused problems from what we can see? Is there a process to get that approved?
I'm not aware of any process. It would be a one-off situation. There isn't provision for appeals or so forth in the federal legislation. It's part of the mission of the outdoor advertising control is set by the federal legislation and put to the individual states to provide that control. And so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
Last follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So who would apply for a variance if indeed someone felt that it might be reasonable to apply for one? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know if there is without an appeals process. I'm not sure who would do the appeal in the first place.
Thank you.
Representative Bogart.
Just to clarify, I think you stated for the fact that basically if this legislation passed, it would nullify all the regulations that would cover this sign, as far as DOT and the feds and everything else. And it could cause penalty to us if we did that.
The way and I'm not an attorney, but the way I read it is it says, notwithstanding the other provisions in this chapter, or this paragraph, which refers to outdoor advertising control, and then goes on to state the limitations or the requirements. It nowhere in there does it say other provisions and outdoor advertising rules apply. So I interpret that as a full exemption from all of the outdoor advertising control office requirements. So that would just leave the city of Concord as a regulator. And another point to emphasize is currently it's a static sign. meaning the face isn't changeable without significant work. So we're talking about something that would become lighted and changeable. So I think it's again, a significant change in use of the sign. Not to say that it's not appropriate, but I think it would, when we talk about, the feds haven't noticed it before. It was not, yeah, I think we're going to see a different type of sign going forward, which I think is what the intent is.
Representative Faulkner, then Jack.
I was just a little concerned about the use of the term grandfather, which I think is a legal conclusion that we're not in a position to make with the information at hand. So something for somebody else to decide, I think. But I think the issue is not just that it's a sign, it's how it's used. The land use code, my understanding is correct, would distinguish the off-premises sign from on-premises sign. Most land use ordinances make that differentiation. So we're making, this legislation would authorize a change in use, not just a continued use. Is that your understanding as well?
Well, currently the sign is advertising for off-premise activities. So
that change may have happened some time ago.
yes, and I think that's was the reason that there was legislation to allow it to be erected, as opposed, because if it were grandfathered, would the legislation have been necessary? I mean,
Representative Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chapter 236 says that the moment that you abandon or demolish a sign, the grandfathering is extinguished. So the question is, what do we think is allowed if you reconstruct a sign in the same location where it is it still grandfathered, or does it have to now conform to the Highway Beautification Act? Because that's clearly what has happened here.
If this were a typically permitted outdoor advertising sign, meaning a billboard on the roadside in a conforming location, as long as the permit is valid, the owner can make changes. If the sign is determined to be non-conforming, meaning it pre-existed the outdoor advertising regulations, but it and was not conforming with all of the requirements, meaning the spacing was too close or it was too tall or something like that, they are allowed to remain until there's a substantial change to the sign itself. And that means any type of structural change, changing the face, other than minor repairs. So in that sense, I think a reconstruction of the sign, if this were a non-conforming sign, would then disallow it for continued use in a non-conforming way. This particular sign is currently allowed by statute, its own statute, and with the proposed legislation, it would not be valid at all, or the outdoor advertising wouldn't have any effect.
Follow
Thank you. I'd like to ask a different question. Do we know of any place else in the state where we have this condition where we're allowing something that Federal Highway would potentially object to?
There is one location that I'm aware of that was permitted in error with a similar situation. Again, we have not called it to anyone's attention.
Representative Rockmore, final
Thank you,
question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's understood that the single worst case scenario is that this sign would actually cost us millions of dollars in highway funds. Am I correct in guessing that the second worst case scenario is the sign gets transferred to the Chamber of Commerce? The Chamber of Commerce pays the money for the sign. Federal Highway Commission says, take it down or you won't get your funding. And the owner, the Chamber of Commerce, takes it down and they're out of their investment, but nothing terrible has happened to the state. Does that sound like a possible scenario to you?
There's a lot of possible scenarios. I think it would depend heavily on how much investment was made and how much fight it exists in the parties at hand. I have not, hard to say. I think there's a whole range of possibilities of what could happen.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing all questions exhausted, at this point in time, I would like to close the public hearing on SB 632. For the next 10 or 15 minutes, I would like to jump back to the timber bill. Do we feel that we have enough information to exec that today, or would we prefer to hold it off till next week? Next week, we're going to meet here at 10 o'clock. I believe we have one Senate bill left, proposed toll bill, and we can certainly exec the timber bill next week. Anybody's, once again, just straw polls. Nobody gets nailed to the cross for their opinion yet. Okay.
I
All
would
right.
agree.
Okay.
My preference is to wait, and if we're gonna, the timber bill, maybe even amend it to New Hampshire lumber. I mean, I think I feel a little bit more comfortable.
Well, then let's talk about that. If we
Okay.
want to amend it to just New Hampshire lumber, who wants to take on that responsibility? Representative Boyd? Anybody else? You can certainly put together an amendment.
I would be willing to be a co-sponsor with Representative Boyd, so it's bipartisan. I'd be willing. Whatever you decide.
Work something out on that then. And I think as far as 632, we're certainly going to hold that off to get some more answers until next week.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'd like to drive by and actually see the sign in my mind. I've probably driven by it, but sometimes that's what I like about it. We're more concrete. And in this case, I think I've got to see what's involved in the area. That's my opinion, to get them, hopefully make up my mind one way or the other.
Be my guest. I don't think it's going to help, but be my guest.
Yeah, you never know, but
you know,
the sponsors, I think we need.
I can hold up this sign if you want to watch it for a while. It's not going to change the circumstances on any of this. But
Mr. Chairman, just briefly,
Yes.
is there a picture that we could get emailed? If it's available, if there's one available.
I don't believe there is one, but once again, I fail to see this, how it changes any of these bizarre little circumstances here. Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, Representative Cloutier could take a
Take
picture.
a photo on my phone.
Sir?
I would have to pull over. You're not supposed to drive and use cell phones.
I have a photo. If you're in.
Okay.
Yes.
I just have the permitting sheet for the existing sign.
That would be great if we could.
I have one copy if you.
If you could get us extra copies by next Tuesday.
Yeah, the whole permitting sheet might be interesting historical context, if that's not too much.
Yeah, I'd like to state for the record that when I pass that sign, I am merging from 89 and I am looking over my left shoulder and there is no way I'm looking to my right for even a fraction of a second.
And here I thought HB 2025 was going to be the end of my headaches.
26, Mr. Chairman.
2026, yeah, that's it. All right, do we have anything else? Folks, well, see you next Tuesday then at 10 a.m.
Okay, thank you. You all set what you want to do with that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay.